Good evening and welcome to tonight's show. I'm your host, Tina Dawson, the owner of True Blue Designs. And it is truly an honor to be before you this evening. Please like and share and let everybody know we're on the air. We are here to inspire and educate you with knowledge. And now, before we start, I want to let everybody know that we're broadcasting live on Facebook and on YouTube at True Blue Designs. So please like and share and let everybody know we're on the air. Now, tonight's guest is a good friend of mine, and she is full of knowledge. And for you homeowners out there, now we're actually in the Atlanta area, outside of Atlanta, and it is a seller's market, which means there are more buyers looking for homes than there is sellers. And one important part of the home buying process is a home appraisal. So tonight's guest is the owner of P and P Appraisals, and she is going to give us some knowledge on tips on home appraising and dispel some myths about home appraising. So help me give a warm welcome to tonight's guest, Miss Sherry Pope.
Me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for saying yes. I appreciate it.
No problem.
With this market that we have, and I'm sure that we're in the Atlanta market, but I'm sure other markets are experiencing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the information that you have to share with us tonight is very timely.
Absolutely.
Very timely. So thank you so much. How's the family?
Everybody's good. Everybody's
That's
good.
good. That's good. That's
How's,
good.
how's yours? How's Damari and your son?
Everybody's good. Damon is back at Fort Hood.
Okay.
And getting ready to go on vacation. So
all right now.
she did internship doing civil engineering, and she has been swamped. Okay. She said yes. So I told her, I said, OJT, on the job training, is the best training you can ever get.
Oh, absolutely.
Best training. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I told her, I said, you must have did very well because you're about to go on vacation, leaving mommy at home. So we're going to start off by letting you tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
All right. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. Okay. Graduated from high school in 1990 and went to Howard University.
The Howard University,
the real HU. And after graduation, I graduated with a bachelor's business administration and computer information systems. Okay. And so after graduation, I knew I didn't want to go back to New York, and my father had moved to Georgia. So I just decided to move to Georgia, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. All right. So from there, did you actually find a job in your field when you got here?
Yes, actually, I was a QA analyst, so I was working in the IT field, and I was doing pretty well. But back then, I needed a little bit of extra money, mm-hmm. So there was someone working in my office part time, and they were doing part time at an appraisal company. And she was like, you should try to get into appraisals just to get the little extra money. Mm-hmm. So I went to the class, did the class, and started working. And it got so busy that I had to make a choice between mm-hmm. corporate and entrepreneurship. So I was like, okay, let me jump, let me leap. And I made that leap, and I haven't looked back.
You haven't looked back. Isn't that a good feeling?
It is absolutely
wonderful feeling. So let me ask you this. So I do know that you're also in real estate. You're a real estate agent. So did you get in real estate first and then appraising, or vice versa?
Vice versa. I became an appraiser in 2001.
Okay.
And then in 2010, I got my real estate license.
Okay. So were you working for somebody else, or you had P and P Appraisals then?
I started P and P in 2004, so about 3 years later.
Okay.
Because when you first get licensed, well, they call it registered. When you first pass the course and take the test, you have to work under an appraiser, a licensed appraiser, for a certain amount of hours before you can start appraising by yourself.
Okay, so something like an apprenticeship.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you had P and P appraisals
Mhm.
during 2008.
I did, and
Oh
it
wow. Because
it was
the market was woo
it was
wee.
bad. I didn't get work for like a year and a half, and
Wow.
I contemplated going back to corporate
Mm,
because I needed money. I needed to pay the mortgage. My son was younger, so he had things going on, but I couldn't do it. I
right.
did little things like when back in the day in the commercials where they would call in and order things, or 1-800 Pro Flowers. I got signed up with a company to answer those calls, and they pay you a quarter a minute, but it added up. It
Okay.
added up. It paid the mortgage, and I didn't have to log into anybody's office. So.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
Have you found that um there's a have you found that when you try to have conversations with people that don't understand that hustle mentality, sometimes people put a negative connotation on that term, but
Mhm.
you have to have that mindset to be an entrepreneur and that drive. And I
Right.
want to commend you because it's so easy to go back to corporate. Now, I'm just gonna tell you the truth. I did.
Right.
'Cause I had, young kids, and I did after 2008. I did go back to corporate,
Mhm.
but I just want to commend you because you stuck it out.
Thank you. I did.
Wow, that is
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, and a lot of changes came after that, like
Oh
just
yeah,
the process. Before then, the bank could talk directly to me and order an appraisal.
okay,
Now there are appraisal management companies. So the bank has to order the appraisal from the appraisal management company, and the appraisal management company orders it from me. So I can't talk to a loan
really?
officer. They can't talk to me. We can't discuss value. None of that.
Wow. Now that makes sense because I was wondering why, for those that don't know, I'm a real estate broker. And so my last deal that I did, the
Mhm.
mortgage lender did say that he had to order the appraisal, but the term he used was kind of strange. So that's what happened. He had
Mhm.
to order it through a company, and the company chooses the appraiser. And,
Correct.
and you're right, because in the past, you were at our fingertips. The appraiser
Oh
was
yeah.
at our fingertips, and
And
not
then
anymore.
y'all, so we technically got blamed for the
Yeah.
crash because they would be in our ear and say, "We need this amount. We need the appraisal to come in this amount." And then
Yeah.
some appraisers, not I,
Yeah.
some appraisers, some appraisers would do that and inflate the value,
Right.
and that's how it popped. And we got the brunt of the blame, so they revamped all of it.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
during that recessionary period, some of everybody went to jail. I mean, you had appraiser, you had prominent attorneys,
Mhm.
you had agents, they went after everybody.
Loan officers,
Loan
loan
officers,
companies. It was
title
bad.
companies. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Everybody had a little piece of the action.
Yeah. 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 When it started crumbling, when it crumbled, it really crumbled.
Yeah, yeah.
So, for those that don't know what we're talking about, we're going to back up. So,
Okay.
let's define what a home appraiser is, and then what
Mhm.
is a home appraisal.
Okay. A home appraiser, I basically tell you how much your home is worth.
Hmm.
And the appraisal is supposed to be an unbiased opinion based on market value, sales, and analysis on
Okay.
how much the homes in your particular market area are selling for. And that's basically what an appraisal is.
Okay. And so, when you're buying a home, you need an appraisal. But let's talk about refinancing.
Refinancing, you need an appraisal as well because they need to figure out if you are, underwater, above water, and how much the house is worth and how much they can lend on. So,
Okay. And
mhm.
so we were talking about this before the show. So the appraisal is the end all be all when it comes to the value of the property. Right.
Correct.
And so if you get a loan for a house, and
Mm-hmm.
it appraises at, say if the home was on the market for, let's just say 150,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And the appraisal comes in at 155,
Mm-hmm.
then if you got the loan for 150, then you have $5,000 worth of equity in the home. Am I right?
Correct. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. But if you
Mm-hmm.
if you if you put an offer on the house for say 160,
Mm-hmm.
and the appraisal comes in at 155
Mm-hmm.
below, then what?
Then the seller has the option to say, okay, it appraised for 155. Let's do an amendment to the contract, and now we'll give you the house for 155. Or, which is typical in this market, you would ask the buyer to pay the $5,000 cash to
Right.
make it the difference.
To make up the difference, right?
Couple of years ago, the latter was the norm. So that the seller would lower the sales price and the buyer would get it for 155.
Right. Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so that appraisal is the end all be all. And I was telling someone, now let me ask you this though. So
Mm-hmm.
say if Jane is thinking about putting her house on the market,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she doesn't have an agent, and
Mm-hmm.
she wants to just find out how much the value of her house is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in today's market, can Jane just call up an appraiser to get an appraisal?
She can, but she cannot use it for any mortgage purposes at all. So she can't use it for anything dealing with money. So it's evaluation purposes only. I put that in big bold letters in the appraisal that she can use this for evaluation purposes only. So yes, she can do that so she can figure out how much she can sell the house for.
Okay, so in that situation, will Jane have to purchase another appraisal? If she's looking to sell, then like you said, that's just her valuation because the buyer
The buyer pays for the appraisal.
Right now,
Mm-hmm.
let's ask this question.
Okay.
So what if Jane gets the appraisal before she puts it on the market?
Mm-hmm.
It's for evaluation only, right?
Okay. Right.
And then the buyer is going to buy her house, gets an appraisal, has to,
Mm-hmm.
and then it comes in for different.
Which is good. That every appraiser is different.
Right.
The appraisal is subjective to the appraiser's opinion. So that is based on the appraiser who's doing that appraisal is based on their opinion. And every appraiser does something a little bit different. Some, I do some appraisal reviews, and some of them come across my desk and I'll be like, what was this appraiser thinking? But so it could come in different. It shouldn't come in that much different.
Okay. And so let's talk, you said you do appraisal reviews. So let's talk a little bit about that. What is that process like?
That's when a lender gets an appraisal across their desk and they find something a little hinky with it, or they want a second opinion. So they'll send it to a senior appraiser like myself. I've been doing it for 20 years. Then they have us review it and see if the comps were valid, if the information in the report was correct, and if we agreed with the value. Okay. And within 5%, if you agree with it, okay, they'll let that go. But sometimes you'll be like, well, they went 3 miles outside and there were like 5, comparables in the subdivision. Why are you going 3 miles? And then that's when it goes to
very far to the left.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, Sherry. This is some good information. So let me ask you this. So for all the viewers, please, if you have a question for Sherry, put your question in the comments. Put a question in the comments. Yeah. And so we'll make sure that Sherry gets a chance to answer it before the end of the show. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Put your comment in the chat. Okay. So let's talk about someone wants to thinking about putting their home on the market. Okay. What are some things that they need to really hone in on to either raise the value or to make sure that they get a good value on their home? What are some things that a seller can do to their home?
Definitely updating the kitchen and the baths. Those are the biggest things. The kitchens and baths, right? flooring, like, because of the appraisal, we look at the overall condition of the property.
Okay.
So with the changes, we have to put them in different categories. So like a C4, condition 4 is, some things have been updated and, they're still, it's livable, but, for the most part, it's just in average condition. A
Okay.
C3, most things have been updated, like the flooring, the kitchen, the baths, and all of that. So to make your house in a condition 3 condition, I would say kitchen, baths, especially if you put it on the market, not for refinancing, that's different.
Okay.
Updating the flooring, paint, because some people got wild colors. You don't ever want to sell your house with wild colors. You want to make them neutral so the buyer can come in and picture their stuff in the house.
Okay.
Pretty much, if you have a basement, finishing the basement definitely adds value.
Okay, and let me ask you something about that.
Mm-hmm.
So if the basement is not finished,
Mm-hmm.
can you claim that square footage?
Absolutely not.
Okay, let's say it again. If you have a house and you're selling the house and your basement is unfinished, can you or can you not claim the square footage?
Absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you this, you can't claim the square footage even if it's finished because it's above ground and below ground and it's separate. So I see a lot of agents when they're listing the house, they'll put, the house is 5,000 square foot when it's really 3,000 square feet on a 2,000 square foot basement. So to market it as 5,000 square feet is incorrect because when we're doing an appraisal, we have to separate it out below grade.
Wow.
So yeah, so a lot of people don't know that. They're like, no, my house is 5,000 square feet. It should, no, ma'am, it's 3,000 square feet on a 2,000 square feet basement. So
let me ask you this. So what if you're on the other end? So what if you're a buyer and, well, this might go back and answer the question that I had before, because if you're a buyer and the listing agent put it in the system like that, you're thinking you're getting 5,000 square feet, and that appraiser comes back and says, because that could cut the value of the house too, couldn't it?
It could. It could. Yeah. If the agent, the selling agent, is pulling comps based on 5,000 square feet, it's going to be higher because bigger houses sell for more. So they could list it for 250 saying, okay, this house is 5,000 square feet. But no, when you look at it, it's 3,000 square feet on the basement. And that's when it'll come in lower because they marketed it wrong. Now it's up to the buyer's agent to do her research and tell her buyer that information is incorrect and this is the way the house, it should be. But
wow, I didn't know that. That's a good one. That's a good because I deal mainly with buyers. I don't, but I've tried the listing side and I just don't like that side. So I really concentrate on. I've been in real estate since 1998. And I really concentrate on buyers because I just like the fact that when they come to me, they don't think that they can. It's like, I think I can. Well, some people don't even think they can, right? And they think that because of the mistakes that they've made, that, they're apartment bound and for years. And when I show them that, yes, if you would just follow the plan of the lender, because, I'm not the money person.
Right.
If you would just follow the plan of the lender and the lenders, some lenders will help you. They'll take you step by step. Like, for example, my niece, the last deal that I closed, we put a plan together for her. And she followed the plan. And now she's a homeowner. And she's paying $400 less as a homeowner than she was paying in rent.
Absolutely.
So it can be done, but you got to follow the plan. You got to follow the plan, and stop having these ideas in the cloud. Come back to earth, and you got to deal with the fact that you didn't pay that bill on time. So we have a question that came up.
Okay.
So Rebecca asked, does a daylight basement make a difference when we were talking about the basement situation?
No, a basement is a basement. It's below ground. So it has to be separated out. It doesn't matter if it's daylight, because some of them on the back is daylight, and on the front you can't see that it's on a basement until you get to the back. But it's all considered below ground.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, we have another question.
Okay.
Okay, Kamaria asks, how common is it for an appraiser to lower the price of a home based on the race of the seller and who benefits from it?
I've seen that in the news, and it always gets me because I could care less who's living in the house. That's not my job. My
Right.
job is to look at the house itself and the condition of the house, and then appraise it based on that. So I could care less who's living in it. But again, I'm a person of color. So on the other hand, I can see how that could happen on the other side.
Right.
But it's supposed to be an unbiased opinion, and whoever does that unbiased should lose their license immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's some of the things that we see on the news, Sherry, I just make me shake my head.
And it's crazy because I always think, I was like, I don't care. It could be woman, man, frog. It doesn't matter to me. I just go in, I look at the house. Sometimes I don't even look at the people.
Right.
I say, don't mind me. I'm just going to walk around, take notes and measurements. And then they just leave me alone. And I just walk around and I say, okay, I'm finished. Bye. And that's it. I could care less who's in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad, but we're, as Miss Sheila used to always say, we need to stay woke.
Yep. Stay woke.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this. So what is an average price for an appraisal?
An average price, because now that the AMC's order it, so they got to get they cut off the top,
Yeah.
and then I get my cut. So I think the AMC's are charging between $500 and $700, and
Okay.
then they take their cut and I get mine.
Okay. So between $500 and $700.
Right.
Okay. So when I talked to you and asked you to come on this show, you said that you were going to dispel some myths. So let's talk about some myths that
All
you
right.
are crazy.
All right. So one big myth: the home inspection is the same as an appraisal. Home inspection and appraising are two totally different things. I'm telling you how much your house is worth, and the home inspector is telling you what's wrong with the house.
Okay. Okay.
And they'll be there for hours.
Yeah.
I'm in and out in like 30 minutes. I don't need to be there that long because I've been doing it so long.
Yeah.
I can walk in the house and see everything that I need to see. Now, the inspector, he's going in the crawl space and the attic. He's testing water and plugs and all of that. I don't need to do all of that. There's some things I have to do with an FHA appraisal. We have to check to make sure the hot water works and the appliances and all of that. But that's minuscule compared to what the inspector does.
Mm-hmm.
So that myth that it's the same thing, totally different.
Okay, so let's talk about that because you just mentioned being an FHA appraiser.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the differences that you have to go through FHA versus conventional when it comes to appraising a home?
We look at a little different. Just look at it a little differently. So I have to go into the attic, take a picture of the attic, take a picture of the crawl space, make sure it's lined correctly. I have to test the appliances. I have to test a couple of the plugs to make sure they have the right electricity. Mm-hmm. I have to test the hot water, and I'm thinking that's it. But back in the day, we used to have to look at if the floor was worn or needed paint, and they would hit it on that. But they took that away about 5 years ago. So, but things like so if you have a deck and the railings are missing, or it's dangerous, I would have to hit you for that. And we look at things like that.
Yeah, because I remember I had. And what about VA? Is VA just as stringent as FHA?
I think it's more stringent. I am not a VA appraiser. I've never done VA, but it's more stringent than FHA.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Cause I remember the last VA deal I did, and the steps were wooden and discolored. And that VA appraiser was like, no, you're going to have to repaint these steps and secure them. and we had to go back out there to make sure that it was done, take pictures, and send it to the lender before they would even give us a clear to close.
Yep, that's called a final inspection.
Final
So
inspection.
right.
Okay.
So if I did the appraisal and I say I put it subject to these repairs. So I
Okay.
say subject to the repair of the broken spindle on the stairs, or back in the day you used to have to do broken windows too. Broken
Yeah.
windows.
Mhm.
So I would put it subject to. And then when all the repairs were made, the lender would order a final inspection, and I would go out, take pictures of all the repairs that needed to be done, and I would have to submit the final inspection order for you to get the clear to close.
Okay. So do you go back and do the final inspection?
They always try to get the original appraiser to do it.
Right.
Sometimes it's not the case because I'll get orders for final inspections and I didn't do the appraisal. And
Okay.
that's typically if the appraiser is out of town or they need it right away because they're closing tomorrow and the appraiser's unavailable. So yeah, I would do it.
Okay. And so let me ask you another question. So,
Mm-hmm.
how far, once the buyer puts the contract down on the house, how
Mm-hmm.
far into that process does the inspector come out? Is it near the end, in the middle? So, do you know when you usually come out? Because it usually take within 30 days to close a deal.
Right. So in every contract, you have contingencies. So
Okay.
you have the contingency where the inspector, and that's usually a 7-day contingency. So you need that inspector to come out within 7 days to tell you if there's anything majorly wrong with the house, so you can renegotiate the contract to see if the seller would pay for any of the repairs.
Okay.
Now the appraisal contingency is usually about 14 days
Okay.
because they have to order it through the third party, and we get it, then we have to schedule, then we have to type it up. So it's usually about 14 days. Sometimes you can extend it if something goes wrong haywire in that time frame, but it's usually 14 days.
Okay. And so have you seen it where the home inspection, so the home inspection is done first and then
Mm-hmm.
the appraisal is done, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Right.
don't the appraisal is not scheduled before the home inspection.
Typically.
Typically it's
Typically.
7
Mm-hmm.
and then 14. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So just letting people know that, there's a laundry list of things that you're going to have to pay for as a buyer, right?
Right.
So, your credit report, some lenders charge you that. Then you
Mm-hmm.
have your home inspection. Oh, before you even get to the home inspection, you have your earnest money. And then
Right.
you have which is your good faith to the contract.
Mm-hmm.
When you have your home inspection, then you have the appraisal, and you may have some other fees other than that.
Right.
Okay.
But I would always suggest, if you're buying, do the inspection first. Right now, most sellers are not, paying for any repairs. But when the
Mm-hmm.
market gets back to normal, get that inspection because you could renegotiate and say, oh, they said something electrical. I need you to fix that, or I need you to take something off the price so I can pay to fix it. So
Right.
that needs to happen first.
Right. And so let's talk about that, because in a seller's market, you are totally correct. Most sellers are not wanting to fix anything. So let's talk about that.
Mm-hmm. They are right now. It is because I'm a real estate agent as well. So there's so many buyers that are putting contracts on the house. The sellers clearly choosing the highest bidder. And
Mm-hmm.
so some of these contracts come in with no contingencies.
Mm-hmm.
The seller says it's as is, not paying for anything. And then some of these buyers are putting in that they will pay over the appraised value if it doesn't appraise at the sale price. So say a
Right.
house is $250 and they bid $270 and say, if it doesn't appraise for $270, I'll pay $10,000 over appraised value. So I come in and it appraises for $250. You actually listed it properly, and it appraises for $250.
Right.
Now the buyer has to come up with $10,000 to make up the difference.
Because they put a statement saying that they will pay $10,000 above
Appraised value, because they know that it's not going to appraise because they're bidding so high over the list price. They know off the rip that it is not going to appraise.
Yeah.
So they want to win the contract so bad because every house has like 20 contracts on it. they want to have the most enticing contract.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in this market, let me ask you this. Okay. Well, we got one more question. So Rebecca asked, you mentioned a C4 and a C3. Is there a C2 and a C1?
There is. The condition 1 is brand new construction.
Oh, okay.
They just built it, and it's nobody's ever lived there. Condition 2 is if it's new construction but has been sitting there for a while. So say, because back in 2008 they had started building, and then so they were sitting there. So if once they started finishing it, it would be considered C2 because it's new construction but had been sitting there. Also, C2 can be considered because I get this a lot when people just bought it last year and they're refinancing. So based on the definition, it can no longer be C1, but it's still new, like new. I would put it in C2.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay. So we're gonna. I had another question, but I forgot it. So we're gonna go back to another myth. So let's dispel another myth. Give us another myth.
Another myth: the borrower or the buyer is the client. Not the case. So when I get the order, a lot of the buyer or the borrower for refinance, buyer for the purchase, they will say, well, can you email me the appraisal? Legally, I cannot, because they're not my client. Even though they paid for the appraisal to the lender, my client is the lender.
Right.
So if I email them or discuss value with them on any level, I am in the wrong. That's illegal because they're not my client.
Wow.
Okay. And a lot of buyers, some borrowers get mad. Well, why can't you email it? I paid for it. Sorry. I like to keep my license.
So let me ask you this question. Mm-hmm. So at the closing table, or even if someone is refinancing, should the borrower/buyer ask for a copy of their appraisal?
The borrower, either one, should have already had that before closing.
Say that again.
Either one should have had that before closing or because they both closed. So you should have a copy. You should automatically get that as soon as I submit it to the lender. Your loan officer should automatically email you a copy because that's where you're supposed to get it from.
Okay, so they don't have to wait until closing.
Oh,
no. Because they've already paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Once I submit it, they should get it immediately.
Okay. And so the appraisor does not, even though the buyer purchased it, the appraisor works for the lender.
Correct.
Right? Not the person that paid. Okay, we're getting pretty good now.
Yeah.
All right, give me another myth to dispel. Come on, this is good.
All right, let's go into what adds value to the home.
Okay.
We're gonna start with what doesn't, because we talked a little bit about what does.
Okay.
What does? Landscaping. You can have the prettiest yard on the block. You done spent tens of thousands of dollars on the shrubbery and the trees and all of that. No value. None whatsoever. I don't even look at the trees. That has nothing to do with the house. I'm coming to look at the house. That has nothing to do with the house.
Okay. See, that dispelling myth. But
don't spend all that money on landscaping. What it adds is appeal.
Curb appeal.
So if the house next door doesn't have any landscaping, y'all are selling at the same time, your house will sell quicker.
Right.
Be quicker than that house, but it doesn't add value.
Right. Wow. Okay. So that's what doesn't. Give me another one that doesn't.
Upkeep of the house, like the roof, the HVAC, windows. You need to do those things. those are necessities. They have to be done. So that's just upkeep of the house. Oh, I just spent $35,000 on the roof. I'm glad so it won't rain inside, but that sorry. Nothing. And windows are expensive because I had to change out a couple, and I was like, "Woo, wait!" but I know I'm not getting that money back because if you look at it like this, I'm looking at what we call a comparable. So what this house next door to me sold last week for a certain amount. So
Mm-hmm.
I look at what I can see on the listing. So the listing agent put in pictures so I can see it's about the same condition, but I don't know, what kind of windows they put in. If they paid top of the line. So when you need to do stuff, never overdo it.
Okay.
Because an appraiser can only see, I have granite, they have granite. Even though my granite, I paid, it's some specialty granite and I paid 10,000 over market value for it. As an appraiser, I can't tell the difference between those two granites. And
Really?
you just got granite. Never overdo the upgrades because there's such a thing called as over improvement.
Over improvement, and you don't get any. Oh
Right.
wow.
But say I won the lottery and I said, okay, I'm gonna make my house exactly the way I want. I'm gonna be an HGTV house, right?
Uh-huh.
There's no other house out here that's HGTV. How do I compare that? How do I make an adjustment for that? Because there's no market value to it because there's nothing else that's selling like that.
Wow. And you only go, you said 3 miles out?
Oh no, ma'am. Okay. When we do an appraisal.
That's another myth. Okay, come
Yeah,
on.
that's another myth.
Let's talk
When
about
you do an appraisal, you people say, oh yeah, the subdivision 2 miles down the road, their new construction, oh, they're selling for like 300. My value's just definitely going up. No, ma'am. Oh, the one down the street, and that's sold, the one, a mile down the road, that's sold for 250. I must be worth that. Nope. If your subdivision, we start in the subdivision. If your subdivision has sales, that's where we start. Okay. Because that would directly compete with your house.
Okay.
Now, we can go outside. We typically go within 1 mile first. And that's after 1 mile. If we look in the subdivision, maybe we find a couple because we have to have 3 comparables, at least 3 on the report. I like to have 4 because I'm thorough like that, but at least 3. So say I have 2 sales in my subdivision, I can go outside and find another one within 1 mile. I like to stay within 1 mile. If there's nothing within 1 mile, we could go 2. We don't typically like to go past 2 unless you're in a rural area. When then, you just going 3, 4, 5 miles to find something comparable. But we start in the subdivision. Prime example, had this house. It was listed for, let's say, I think it was like 305.
Okay.
And it was a ranch with a bonus room, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. So, little ranch, about 1,600 square feet. So I started in the subdivision. There were 5 sales in the subdivision. 5. All of them ranging from 230 to 250.
Wow.
All ranches on a slab, 3-2 with a bonus room. All about the same square footage with, little differences.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think the house is worth? What that house should have been worth or listed for? About 250, in between the 230 and the 250.
Yeah.
So I called the agent and I said, and I'll do this. I will call the agent and say, can you give me the comps that you use to make your listing price? Okay. And so she sends me houses on basements, houses 5 miles away, houses that are new construction, houses that were 2,000 square feet bigger. And I'm like, that's not how this works.
Right. That's crazy.
And I was like, well, and then I asked her, so did you take into consideration any of the sales in the subdivision? And she said, well, no, not really. All the other subdivisions are going up in price except this one.
But you have to. Okay.
Well, you're in this one, so that's what I have to base my appraisal on.
Right. So based on your story, let's go through that again.
Okay.
Based on your story, if it doesn't matter if you're in a large subdivision, let's just say that, right? It doesn't matter what's going on around you. What's important is what's going on within the subdivision, right?
Correct.
And if there has, especially in this market, if there have been a lot of sales, right? then we go
Mm-hmm.
in, and then we go out.
Right.
Right. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are someone that is looking to list your home, I hope you are paying attention, because you're going to hire 9 times out of 10 a real estate agent to list your
Mm-hmm.
home. And they should give you comparables before they come up, as a way to come up with what they are going to suggest that you list your house at, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And if they did not go in, then go out, you need to question that value.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, when they get the value wrong, the person who hurts, or the person who it messes with, is the homeowner.
It's the homeowner, and it always bothers me because I'm like, you're setting this homeowner up for failure. But it
Mm-hmm.
even bothers me more that the buyer's agent is going to allow you to put this contract on this house,
There you go.
knowing that it's
Okay,
not worth it.
so that's part two. So
Right.
we just talked about part one,
Right.
right? So I'm gonna go over it again, because this is so important. This is a hot market. I don't care if you live in Chicago, if you're watching from California, if you're watching from Georgia, if you're watching from Puerto Rico, it don't matter. It's a
Mhm.
hot market. It is a seller's market, right?
Yeah.
And if you are thinking about, I'm telling you, if you're thinking about listing your home, this is the market to do it in. If you want to move, this is the time to move. Really,
It is.
But now, she just pointed out, if you are looking for a home and you employ a real estate agent, and you're looking for a house on 222 Butterhill Court, right? You need to ask that buyer's agent for comparables. Because think about it, Sherry, the buyer doesn't know.
No, they sure don't. They're just like, okay, you said it's worth
The seller doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the seller doesn't know, right?
Mhm.
So even the buyer needs to do their own homework and understand that, hey, if the houses around here are selling for 225, and then you come up on a house that's 350,
Something's not right.
Yeah, something's not right.
Right.
Yeah, your antenna need to go up.
Well, right now people are just bidding anything just to win the contract, but we're talking normal market.
We're talking about normal market. Yeah,
normal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now they're just going to put a contract and say, just give me the contract and then we'll figure out the details later.
Right.
That's what's happening.
But you know what? But even new home buyers, they still need to listen to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Even saying, we're just going to win the bid and give me the house, even that can burn you.
Yeah.
Right? If you're not understanding the market and you're not seasoned in this market, that can burn you.
Mm-hmm.
That could burn you as a first-time home buyer. Okay,
right.
we got quite a few questions came in. Okay, let's see. How about this one? Okay, Kamaria asks, what matters when upgrading a kitchen and bathroom?
Just that it's upgraded. It doesn't have to be fancy. They've got, this new thing called luxury vinyl plank that looks like hardwoods. It's really quite nice. I'm looking into it as well. Just paint, the fixtures, but nothing fancy for the bathroom. Just make it nice. Kitchen, typically granite, marble, or Korean countertops, stainless steel appliances.
Okay.
Tile backslash if you so choose. And just
flooring. What about flooring?
Flooring, typically flooring in the kitchen is usually tile or hardwoods if you have hardwoods throughout the house.
Okay, so that'll upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, we got another one. They're coming in tonight, boy. Okay. So Patrice asks, does the owner of the home get to see the comps chosen by their real estate agent?
If you're talking about the seller, yes, because the agent should be giving you a CMA, a comparative market analysis. Mm-hmm. And that comparative market analysis has the comps that the agent is choosing to come up with your list price. So then once they give you that, you should be able to see all the comps that they chose.
And so that should be a discussion.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
They should come to your house, have it printed out, and they should say, this is comp number one, and this is why I chose it, because it's comparable to your house for X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Okay, so here we got another one. Okay, so Rebecca asked when something else popped up on the screen. Lord. Okay, when people come into a moderately priced neighborhood and build a mini mansion, how does that impact the rest of the neighborhood? Good question, because that's being done a lot.
Yeah, that's a nightmare for an appraiser, because now you're in this neighborhood with 3 2s, and now you got this 5 4 5,000 square foot just sticking up out of the ground, but it doesn't, because you're not comparable. It's all about what is comparable and who would buy your house versus the next house. So somebody looking for a 5 4 5,000 square foot is not the same buyer for a 3 2 ranch.
Okay.
So it's all about what's comparable.
So if that happens, so that doesn't, so you're saying that 5 4 doesn't impact the rest of the homes that are 3 2 because they're not comparable.
Correct.
So that's another myth, because another myth is that people will say that if you build that in my subdivision, they're going to make my taxes go up. They're going to make my property value go up.
No, because the property value is based on the land, and everybody's lot should be the same value. Okay. And then it's based on the size of the house and how big it is and such. So everybody's taxes would never be the same if you've got such big anomalies in the subdivision. It would never be the same.
Okay. That's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, these questions are rolling in, boy. I tell you, this is good. Okay. There's another one. Does granite matter in the bathroom?
It's more, it's aesthetically pleasing, but I've seen where they can do the laminate to look like granite, and I gotta touch it. I gotta touch it to see if it is actually granite or laminate. So something like that. It's about how it looks.
Okay.
That's how the appraisal works. About how it looks and what condition I can put it in. Like I would put it in C3 because you updated it, whether it be the highest the high updates or the lowest the low, it's still updated.
Right.
Right. So it's all about how it looks.
Okay, I have another question. So you buy in your current house, you have nothing but carpet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you update, you pull out the carpet and you update with either laminate or hardwood floors. Mm-hmm. Will that increase the value?
It can. If I can tell that there's a difference in your market, that it made a difference in the value. Okay, so this is, I'm gonna break it down for you, right? Okay, so what it's called is a paired sales analysis, right? Okay, so we have 2 houses exactly same square footage, same bedroom and bath. Okay. One has, let's say it's a pool. One has a pool and one doesn't. Now then one pool, the one with the pool sold for $150 and the one without the pool sold for $140. I can deduce that the value of that pool is $10,000.
Okay.
Because you've got the exact same house and the only difference is that pool. So that pool is worth $10,000. That rolls me into another myth. You're never going to get dollar for dollar for updates, pools, decks, all of that, because I don't know how much you paid for it. I can only tell you the market difference.
Right.
For a home that's sold with it versus without it.
Right.
Now, if those same 2 houses that had sold at the same price, say they both sold at $150.
Okay.
There's no value for that pool.
Right. Because an appraisal is a comparison.
Yeah. So if I put in a pool, say I put in a pool in my backyard and I say, oh yeah, I'm about to get all the value. And then 2 houses in my subdivision sell, and most of the houses here are the same. So we're about, with little differences. So I put a pool in, and then I have one that's had a pool and one that didn't, and they both sold for the same amount.
Okay.
I'm not getting anything for that money, the money that I just spent to put that pool in. So it's all about me being able to definitively figure out a value for the differences in comparables.
Wow. Okay. So just based on that, we are blowing up.
No, I'm sorry.
Let me get this one. Let me get this one.
Okay.
Okay. This is Robert Eason.
Hi, Brother
And
Ethan.
he says, as we start the transition out of COVID pandemic, what impact will it have on the home buyers market?
Apparently, this whole COVID pandemic has not had any effect. It had the opposite effect. It's weird. I thought work would slow down. I thought that people would stop buying, but it's just had the opposite effect. Like, I have not stopped working this entire time. The rates are low, so everybody's refinancing. The rates are low, so everybody's buying. So it really hasn't affected. So when I'm thinking it's going to bust. I'm praying that it will not bust as bad as 2008. But this can't sustain.
Right.
Because now you have people purchasing underwater because you're paying above appraised value. So now you don't have any equity. You're underwater. Now you got to wait to build that equity back up. And if you can't afford it, you started off underwater. Right. So hopefully it won't bust as bad, but it's coming.
Yeah, it is. Me and you were talking about this before the show. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And it's weird. I just felt like, people were losing their jobs. I just knew that it wouldn't be busy, but
yeah. I told my daughter this. I said, during this pandemic, everybody's not hurting. Some people have seen the opportunities, just like in 2008. When we hit that recession, for some people, it was prime opportunity.
Yeah.
And they took advantage of it. And that's all I can say.
I got nothing. I don't know why.
I mean, I was left speechless in 2008 when I saw how the stuff was moving. You had people coming in from out of town jumping on stuff, Right. And so now you have COVID. And I, just like you, I was watching the market, and I was like, I mean, these people are buying houses like crazy, and we're supposed to be on shutdown.
Right.
Crazy. Okay, let me see if we can get some more in. We got 7 more minutes. Let's see, because they're coming in. Okay, we got one from Shay. Okay, so Shay asks, why would an agent allow a buyer to overbid on a home knowing they will start off underwater? Good question.
Good question. In this market, because that is the only way you're going to win the contract. That's the only way. In a normal market, that's just a buyer's agent not doing their due diligence for their buyer. Right. But in this market, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you, you need to bid 20,000 over and then put that clause in, and then we'll figure out where the chips fall after if you win the contract, because you could do all of that, and because that seller has 20 other contracts to look at, and somebody may have sweetened the pot a little bit better, you might not even win that contract with all the overbidding.
Yeah. So let's go back right quick, and we're going to explain to them again about it being a seller's market. So a seller's market is when there are more buyers than there are homes for sale, more buyers than sellers. So what's going on is that me and Sherry was talking about this. We're seeing houses one day on the market, the next day is under contract. And in a normal situation, that's not heard of. Right? Because usually it sits for a couple of days, weeks, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, about 30 to 90 days.
Yeah. And you're not really fighting. But in today's market, we're seeing stuff leaning to the side, getting 10 and 15 contracts on a house. And we're not talking about investors. We're talking about home buyers. And so it's really a competition out there.
Oh yeah, and people are putting contracts on the house sight unseen.
Yes.
They haven't even looked at the house. They said, I'm tired of looking. I want this one. I'm just going to put a contract on it and see if I get it. And then they'll see it afterwards. because I was
Yeah.
appraising a house, and the sellers came in. They were from out of town. They were from New Jersey, and I was like, oh, okay, these not the sellers, the buyers. And I was like, oh,
Uh-huh.
the buyers. I introduced myself, and they was like, yeah, we're just seeing it for the first time. And I was like, you have the contract on the house. Never had seen it.
Never
I
seen
hope
it.
you like it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? The likelihood that that person reneges is very close to zero,
Right.
because the houses is just so much competition.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we
Yeah.
got another question. We're gonna try to get them
Okay.
all in. We got 4 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I can go a little bit longer if you need me to.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We're good. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to find. I can't read that one. Okay, here it is. So
Okay.
if you have a C3 house
Mm-hmm.
and your subdivision didn't get finished, but a developer comes to develop the remaining land, does your property value go down because you have a C1 compared to a C3?
No, what I would do there is I would use a couple of the C1s, new constructions, and make an adjustment based on the market analysis of how much a new construction sells more than a C3 house. So say I'll use 2 in the subdivision, or maybe one, probably 1 or 2, depending on what's outside. Then I'll go outside, within 1 mile, and find 2 other C3s similar to your property, and say the new construction is selling for 270 and the C3s are selling for 250, then I know I need to make that $20,000 adjustment. So it doesn't bring your value down. It might even bring it up, depending on the market at the time, but it doesn't bring it down.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to find the question because I can't read. I can't see. Can you see that question? It's so tiny.
Yeah. Is it normal for taxes to differ by hundreds of dollars on the same model house in the same subdivision? I disputed, but they reappraised it and it's the same, but neighbors is less. That's interesting because tax assessors are totally different than appraisers. They have a whole algorithm that they use, and I'm not sure what that is. But typically you can, if you really want to, if you can get an appraisal to appeal it, and sometimes the tax assessor will accept the appraisal. But if it's the same house, it shouldn't be different. They have something's different on their end. There's something different between your 2 houses at that tax assessor's office that's making it different. It could be homestead exemption. They could be older, because I know the taxes get lower once you get older. You can file for homestead exemption, but something's different on their end.
Okay. And so that's another thing, because if that's a good point though too. I probably need to find a tax assessor to get on the show. Because let me ask you this. So let me ask you this, based on what you just said. So when you do an appraisal, do you or do you not include the value of the land?
It's all inclusive.
Okay.
We don't separate it out.
So if a person has an acre versus, so if there's 2 houses the same and one sits on an acre and one sits on 3/4 of an acre, do you have to take into consideration that acreage?
Not with that the small of a difference, because you got to think: would a buyer pay more money for a quarter of an acre?
Okay,
probably.
Okay,
and sometimes you can tell. Sometimes your buyer won't even pay more for like over an acre, because you could tell that they're selling for exactly the same, even though one house has 2 acres and one house 1. Now, when you get into more acreage, what I will do is go in the marketing area and find land sales and figure out how much they're selling per acre, and then make an adjustment that way. But that's when you get into rural areas where there's a lot more things. But if you're talking about, because some agents were like, well, my house has 0.75 acres and their house had 0.5. As a buyer, I'm not going to pay any more money for this much more land. Right. So there's no market value to that.
Okay. So one person asked, put this one up. Um, if you already own your home, can or should you get it appraised?
The only reason you would need an appraisal is if you're trying to sell it and you want to determine how much you're going to sell it for, or if you're refinancing, and then the bank does that. But if you're not doing either of those, I mean, you could do it for your personal knowledge, but if you're not doing either of those, there would be no reason for you to get appraised.
And they're a lot of money. That, I mean, it's
yeah,
a nice chunk of change. So
if you call me and say, I just want to know how much my house is worth as a stranger, oh, I'm charging you between $350 and $500. So
right.
It's Mm-hmm.
Let's see if we got any more. Here's one. Is it a myth? I can't see it. It's so small.
Is it a myth that corner lots appraise higher? Absolutely. When you buy that home, oh yeah, corner lots, they charge you, and they still do it in new construction. They'll charge you an extra $25,000 to $5,000 for the corner lot. When it comes down to it, if your lot is the same exact size as the one, even though it's corner versus interior, means absolutely nothing. Now, with new construction, I can do a little bit more because those prices are structured and I can prove that. But if you got an older home and you're on a corner lot and you paid 20 years ago, you paid an extra $5,000, it means absolutely nothing.
What about cul-de-sacs?
Same thing. I knew you was coming with that question. Same thing.
Wow.
There's not even a section on the form to put whether it's a cul-de-sac or a corner lot. There's no way to adjust for that. The market, no.
Wow. Okay, so let me ask you this. So what if you have an older home and say it was a 1950 home, right? And we're in 2021, right? And you go in and you spend the money to upgrade all of the wiring, right? And just upgrade mainly the wiring that's aesthetics to the home. Does that increase the value?
It does, because it increases it affects your effective age. So if your house that was built in 1950 and you have done absolutely nothing, your effective age is about 35, 40 years. But if you've come in and updated electrical and flooring and kitchen and baths, now your effective age is closer to a newer house. So I would compare it to a house that has been renovated, that's newer, because it's now the same effective age as a newer home.
Okay. So that's good to know. Okay. All right. Let's see. Come on, y'all. She's going to stay a little bit longer. So ask your questions. This is good, boy. I tell you. Hey, this market is off the chain. Okay, here's one. Okay, you're going to have to read it, Sherry, because it's too small.
All right. Have we seen the effect of foreclosures from the pandemic yet on the market? Not yet, because people are still buying. But I guarantee you in the next year or two, there will be a lot of foreclosures for all those people who went in.
Opportunity.
Yeah, which you opportunity. Start stacking your coins so you can snatch some of those up when they come available. You got to be patient. Patient. But it's coming. I can see it.
Because that's what happened, and we're talking about 2008 all over again, right? Because that's what happened in 2008.
Values were inflated. People were paying the inflated values, and they couldn't afford it. And it might be a little different because the rates are lower now. Back in 2008, you were getting 7, 8, 9%. Right now, you're at 2.5%, 3.25%. So it might be a little different, but there's still going to be some bustage.
Some bustage. But again, that equals opportunity.
Yeah.
It equals opportunity. I hope these viewers are listening. Okay, well, let me ask you this. So you gave us, I think you started off with the myths that don't add value. Is that what you started off with?
Yes, I did.
So give us some stuff that does add value.
typically pools do add value. So I did give you that that scenario where it may not, but typically they do because they typically
Okay.
sell for higher. You know,
How
adding
about
on to it, huh?
how about a fence? Fences.
No, 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 not really. That
What?
adds appeal. It adds appeal. Not that.
Oh wow. I know some people that really have spent a lot of money on their fences.
Yeah, yeah, because but then you got people got wood and chain link and all of
Yeah.
this, and I can't tell the the
Yeah.
value and the difference and how much you pay for your chain link versus your wood. So yeah,
Hmm.
no,
No.
it adds appeal. Your house will sell quicker because people typically want a fenced yard. It'll sell quicker, but
Right.
it doesn't add value. All of the
Okay.
things that people think add value is just to get upkeep your home, make it the way you want it, and hopefully when you do decide to sell, somebody else wants it exactly the same
The
way you
same
want
way. Oh, one question. What
it.
about redoing your deck? What about adding a deck and redoing your deck?
Now,
What?
appeal, you can redo it all you want. Now it's fresh and bright for you, but again, the house next door has a deck. I can't
Right.
tell when they put it in. It could be new, it could not be new. I can't tell the difference.
Wow. So is it safe to say from the inside walls in? Because it
Yes,
sounds like everything we talked about exterior, you
yes.
said no.
Mhm. Interior, definitely adding square
Interior,
footage. So if
add
you
a square foot.
add on to the bedroom or to the bathroom, definitely, because that always adds value if you add on
Oh,
square footage.
I
If you
got a question.
enclose a sunroom, like you have a screen porch and you enclose it and include it in the gross living area, that definitely adds value.
Okay, I got a
Mm.
good question.
Okay.
So we had on Gregory Brown not too
Mhm.
long ago,
Okay.
and he talked about community vision, and he works in the planning department in his county.
Okay.
And he talked about making additions to your home and that you need to get them permitted. So my question is,
Oh, I got something else to go with that. Okay, go ahead.
okay, so my question is, we're going to piggyback on that interview. So if you make any structural changes to
Mm.
your home and you do
Mm.
not get them permitted, can
Mhm.
an appraiser consider those changes, those upgrades in her report?
No, because I've had that before. So some people they would enclose their garage.
Yes.
So typically, and some people don't get it permitted. The only way to make it count is as gross living area is if it is included in the HVAC system. So you need to put a vent out there so it's heated and cooled with the rest of the house. So if you
Correct.
enclose your garage, you put some carpet out there, and you just put an AC unit, one of those ones you get from Home Depot, that's not going to add any value because I'm going to come in and say, it's not vented, it's not heated and cooled, it's now just extra space. And now I may have to hit you because you don't have covered parking. Because
Oh,
depending on your area, covered parking is essential. Everybody has a 2-car garage out here. So if you enclose yours and now you no longer have a 2-car garage, that diminishes your value.
wow. But okay, so if you have a two-car garage and you're using it for storage, you still
Mm-hmm.
have a two-car garage.
You still have a garage. You can just clean it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you close it
Yes.
in, but
If
if
you
you
close
close
it in and just throw some random, carpet and you're using it for a rec room or anything, unless you get it permitted and you get it vented to be,
the HVAC into it.
yes, then you cannot count it.
So that goes into that also goes for when you were saying earlier about a screened in porch.
Mm-hmm.
You were
You got to do
saying
the
you
same
can't
thing.
start saying that same thing. If you don't pull
Mm-hmm.
that HVAC in, you cannot. Ooh, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why it's good? Because what was the one thing people did during the pandemic? Home renovations,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Right.
And they now may be looking to sell their home,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're not
Right.
going to get, if they did not do it right, they're not going to get those extra upgrades or renovations counted properly,
Right.
or the feet there should be the way they think they,
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't take these things into consideration, right?
Right. Right. So,
Right.
and this as a just this is so important. Do not spend over the top. Oh, you're gonna walk into the store and they're gonna say, you like, look at this precious, this cute tile, and it's like, $20 a tile. Oh, it's gorgeous. But the same tile over here for $2 a tile, I need to get the $2 tile, because when I look at it, I'm like, okay, that's pretty. I can't tell the difference between tiles. It looks the same, but
Right.
one's 20 and one's 2. So just never overspend. No, never over improve your house for your
Never over
area.
improve for your area. Never over
Mm-hmm.
improve for your area.
Right.
Okay, we're gonna do a couple of more. Okay.
Okay.
Patrice says, even when
Uh,
you were talking about pools, so what
First
about
of
above
all,
ground pools?
above ground pools are considered personal property. I just went to a house that had the decking that was around the pool, and that's all it had. The pool was gone. The seller took it. So you could take that pool with you. I don't care how fancy the decking is, and you won't probably take it, but it can be removed. That gives no value. Absolutely. That no. Because I've seen some fancy above ground pools, like some
Yes,
fancy
yes,
thing, and they look really
yes.
nice, but they still can be removed and it's considered
Okay.
personal property.
So when it comes to a pool, only in ground.
Right. Only in ground would add value. Yes.
Only in ground at bay. Okay.
Mhm.
Felicia said you may have answered this already, but what are the areas in your home you should upgrade if you want to sell in the near future? Can you go back over that again right
Yeah.
quick?
Kitchens and bathrooms and paint. Paint can do the world of difference. So definitely paint, kitchen, bathrooms. As long as your flooring isn't like horrible, like, some homes I go in and I'm like, how are you living like this? But, as long as your floorings are in good shape, you don't have to update them, or, but if, they're ratted, tatted, and stained, you might want to pull that up and give that a fresh look,
Right. Okay. And Felicia asked one more question. She said, does it make sense, in your opinion, Sherry, does it make sense to upgrade your house or buy new?
If I'm hearing that question correctly, like if you like, it's like love it or list it.
Yeah.
Okay. I love my house. So for me, I would fix my house up and stay here, because I don't, I love my house. I don't want to leave. But for other people, that might not be the case. So it's all about your personal preference. And then new construction, they got things wrong with it, because if I knew a lot of things that I know now when I bought my house new construction, I might not have bought this house. So yeah, just
Yeah.
if you have a house that you love and you got it just the way you want it, in my opinion, I would just stay there.
Yeah, and that's what I did. People have been asking me, now you're an empty nester, what are you going to do? And,
Mhm.
what I chose to do is, instead of thinking about, oh my God, my kids are gone, I'm by myself, I said, okay, what I chose to do was to start turning my house into my home. So
Yeah.
I started one room at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and taking 30 days between projects. Trying to do
Yeah,
it
it's a
just
lot.
look, I just had surgery not too long ago. But just the feeling that you have, the feeling
Mm,
of pride, the sense of pride that you have to know that you're seeing the transition,
right.
you know, and like you said, just turning it into what you've always wanted. I told somebody this the other day. I
Mm.
said, you do know that with just some work, you can turn your house into those new houses that you're seeing.
Oh, absolutely. Because these new houses,
Being nowhere near the
nope.
amount of money.
Because these new houses are just putting in the bare minimum and
Yes.
charging hundreds of thousands. They're putting in that LVP. They
Mm-hmm.
have your laminate. They're not giving you no hardwoods. They may give you a little granite and some stainless steel, but that everything else, that's just basic stuff that you could go to Home Depot and get and put in your house. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, take the time to plan one room at a time. I'm telling you, you can transform your house into
Mm-hmm.
a home, and you get it the way you want it. You won't be talking about listing.
Yeah. Nope. I'm not going anywhere. I'm talking about paying it off.
I'm with you on that.
Mhm.
Sherry, thank you so much. This was awesome. I'm gonna have to find a tax assessor because you're right.
Yeah, because that's a whole different conversation that I
Yeah,
can't have. But
yeah,
yeah,
that
absolutely.
that is. And
Mhm.
we're gonna put your information. Where is your information? There we go. We're gonna put your information down at the bottom. Sherry is available. You can email her. She has Facebook and she has Instagram. And the purpose of this platform is to educate and inspire the viewers. We have guests on to give them a platform for them to talk about who they are, what they do, and give the inside perspective of what they know. And this is free. This is free information, Sherry. And so,
Yes,
this
ma'am.
is something that people can go back and play it over and over again. And people have been telling me that it's easier for them to uh, find the videos on YouTube versus Facebook. So that's like a library.
Mhm.
YouTube is now like a library of information that I hope people will use and share because you gave a lot of good information. Me and you in the same industry. That's why a lot of the stuff you were talking about laughing. You don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And then you get connected with somebody that tries to play games on what you don't know. The seller and
Mhm.
the buyer can end up paying for it, right?
Right.
So
Right.
use us as a resource. Sherry and I and all the other guests that have been on since December are here as resources. You have their numbers, you have their email addresses. Reach out to them. And Sherry is open to answer questions where she can, and she can point you into the right direct direction. But what you shouldn't do is not do anything and not ask questions, right?
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you for having me on. I was nervous, but
Yeah.
it ended up
You
being
did good.
you can always talk well about what you know. And
Yes.
I've been doing this 20 years and I know what
Yeah.
I'm doing. And so it flowed. So I hope everybody got a lot of information from it and
Yeah.
enjoyed it. And of course, if you have any questions, you can email me, hit me up, on Facebook or Instagram, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Sherry, you know you hear my heart, sweetie. I thank you so much. You stay on. Everybody,
Okay.
thank you for letting us go a little over today. But she gave some nuggets. She dropped some diamonds, gave some nuggets, and I hope y'all picked them up and put them in your bag. I am Tina Dawson with True Blue Designs. I'd like to thank you so much for viewing. We will see you next Wednesday, same time, same place. Good night, everybody.
Good night.